I got an email from this shopkeeper in a small New England town up in Vermont. He said, Ollie, I am perplexed and I need help. Well, it sounds strange, but my shop sells a couple of things, but one thing we sell is we're a butcher shop, among other things, and someone's been breaking in and stealing the pig's blood. And it's not a big deal. It's not a very profitable product, but it's weird. It's making me very uncomfortable that they keep on getting in. And there's got to be something weird going on. Who needs that much pig's blood? Well, that got Ollie's curiosity up. So he wrote back and said, I'll take the case. I can come up there at the end of this coming week. Shopkeeper said, great. Look forward to seeing you. My aunt has an apartment above her garage that's empty if you want to use that to stay while you're here. And I said, sure, that sounds fine. So, at the end of next week, Ollie wrapped up some things and headed up to Vermont. Got on the train and took a nice leisurely ride up to Vermont. And then it was about a half an hour drive from the train station to this town. So as Ollie pulled in, he'd gotten a rental car. The shopkeeper who had hired him offered to pick him up, but Ollie had found that when he's on these field cases, it's better to have his own vehicle, because sometimes things aren't what they seem. So Ollie pulled into the address he'd be given, this apartment. He checked it out, and it was going to be good, he thought. Even though he didn't really know this woman, the aunt, the house had its own or the apartment rather, was above a garage, had its own driveway, its own entrance. So I feel like he could work with that. So he got in, put his bags in there, went and introduced himself to the aunt, and she seemed nice. And he said, well, I should probably go check in with your nephew. She said, oh, yes, Jeremy, well, he'd be in the shop this time of day. And she gave him the address, and he went downtown, and the shopkeeper was really glad to see him. It's like, oh, good, you're here. So, yeah, I heard, we've got this whole shop here, and we've got meats and bread and things like that. And then we also have some homebrew supplies. It's just kind of a shop of things that I would want, things that I do want. And yeah, someone's been sneaking in and taking animal blood from the butcher shop part of things. And, I have rules about how I need to dispose of that, but also it's creepy and weird. So I thought I brought you in because I know you've tangled with a lot of weird things. I said, well, all right, have you told the local police about this? I said, yeah, I have. And, they came and they filled out a report, but they didn't seem that interested. And I called, and they said they turned the report in to the police chief, and they didn't have any more information. And the police chief hasn't returned my calls. It's a small town, and it's a small police force. There's the chief, and then there are 10 officers, and that's it. That's the whole police force. There's a police building downtown, and it's got a little jail in it, and if anyone does anything serious, they get sent upstate, but people rarely do. I said, all right. Well, let me ask around and see if anyone's, heard of anything. You're right, it sounds like some sort of witchcraft or pagan ritual. So I started asking around, and he figured if there was a weird pagan ritual, maybe the library would be a place to find out about it, some local tradition. So we went to the library, and he asked the librarian there, I said, hey, so I'm visiting town, visiting a friend, And I always try to look up some of the local lore, the local stories. So I was curious what there is around here. I know that there's a lot of stories about like, witchcraft and things like that in this part of New England. Is there any like cool stuff like that here? And my brain said, "Oh yeah, there's a little bit of that. There's there's rumors anyway of this club called the Nightingales Club, and supposedly they've been meeting and been a thing for like 200 years. And they supposedly they have a basement or a room somewhere hidden away where they meet once a month and they do dark rituals that they say protect the city, protect the town, I should say. But nobody ever admits to being one of the Nightingales. That's one local rumor. And then another supposedly is a witch that lives out in the forest, and she's supposedly, immortal. She supposedly has lived for 120 years so far. She supposedly was born right on the stroke of midnight in the year 1900. In some of the legends, she's good. In some of the legends, she's evil. And she's always tall. And yes, those are the two big like witchcraft urban legends around here that I'm aware of. There's some other ones about a guy in a bunny suit that hangs out on bridges, but that doesn't seem to have much evidence behind it. So, yeah, those are the ones that I know about. They're not that I'm aware of, though, any books written about it, so I can't point you to anything there. Honestly, if you want to learn more about it, I would just kind of like hang out at some of the local bars and ask people. If you find some of the old timers, they'll probably know more about the legends. Because the librarian was only in the 30s. So Ollie asked, well, which bars do some of the old timers hang out in? And the prince said, oh, well, there's only really 3 bars in town. There's the Roost, which is up kind of the north end of town. And then there's Sal's, and that's really just a couple doors down from here. And then down kind of by City Hall, there's Iglesias. And I guess the Roost is probably the one that has more of the old timers. And then of course, you should really talk to the chief of police if you can get some time with him, because he's lived here since he was born and his family's been here for like ever. So he knows all the local stuff. I said, all right. So just seeing if he could, Ollie went over to the police station and asked if he could talk to the chief of police. He figured he'd probably get a no, but it's worth asking. And to his surprise, the person at the desk said, yeah, let me call over there and see if he's in. And the guy called and said, yeah, he's here. He's got some time. He'll meet with you, sure. If you want to grab a coffee from the cafeteria, that'd put you in his good graces. He always has a coffee bot now. So I thought, well, small town's informal, I guess. And so he took a coffee and talked to the police chief. I said, so you're a private eye, the police chief said. What brings you to our town? I said, well, I was investigating this weird thing where there's some like pig blood being stolen. And they don't take everything else, but they just take the pig blood. He just said, yes, I saw that report. Honestly, it's not very important, so I haven't looked into it. If we start getting actual valuable things stolen, we can look more into it, but pig's blood is mostly waste. If we had more Germans in town, I guess we could make some blood sausage, but we don't. And so, no, I'm not going to spend a lot of city resources on investigating someone sneaking in and taking some blood from a butcher shop. I've told him he should just invest in better security doors or talk to one of my officers about security concerns. It's not that big of a town. I don't know what someone's doing, but it's not that important to me. No, I said, all right. I said, well, so I'm curious. I hear you've been in this town since you were born, and your family's been here a long time. I was curious about some of the local legends, like the witch out in the forest and the Nightingales. And she just said, yeah, the Nightingales, that's not real. Everyone always thinks it's some Illuminati, and they usually target my family because we've been here so long, but Nightingales are just a myth. The witch, I'm sure there was some old lady out in the forest at some point. Maybe she was crazy or lonely or didn't like people, but I'm not aware of anyone living in the forest right now. Anyway, I've got to go. So thank you for coming by. Let me know if I can be any other help. And you shoot Ollie out of the office politely. I thought, well, that was strange. He was all friendly and warm and in no hurry until I mentioned the Nightingales. Then all of a sudden, he couldn't get me out of his office fast enough. So Ollie went over to the roost. And he looked around at the staff there. The barkeeper was an older guy, looked like he'd been there forever. And the hostess server was, he talked to her briefly, and she was married to the barkeep. And the owner, they said that the owner was not in and didn't like to be bothered. Nobody seemed all that friendly, so Ollie went around to the side, and then, while he was out back there, somebody came out from the back of the shop and dumped a bucket of dishwasher down into the alley. And I said, aha. And so he went over and he talked. I said, hey, how's it going? The guy said, good, how are you? I said, good. You work here? I said, oh yeah, I'm a cook, and right now I'm just washing dishes. Nothing special. I said, so the Roost is kind of a weird name, isn't it? I said, yeah, well, I mean, it's because those creepy guys have hung out here for like 100 years. And I said, oh, the creepy guys? I said, yeah, I mean, we're like a regular bar and restaurant and all that, but then there's the upper room, and that's just all these, like, fancy people that think they're all fancy. I don't know, man, I'm from New York City. These people think they're all fancy and sneaky, but they're just a bunch of old fops pretending at their little, games like they're the Illuminati or something. Anyway, they don't seem to be doing any harm, but it's a little silly. I said, so there's a group of men that meet in some upper room in the Roost. What, like once a month or something? I said, yeah, no, it's always the second Tuesday of the month that they meet. I don't know what they talk about. They just order a bunch of beer and a bunch of food, and that's all fine with me. But they always stop talking when me and the waitress come into the room. For some reason, they don't mind talking when the bartender's up there. Maybe he's a member of the little club or something. I don't know. I said, all right. So he said, the second Tuesday of the month, huh? I said, yeah. So it's the second Monday now. I said, yeah, I suppose that's true. No, I said, well, if I give you $40, you show me how to get in. The guy said, I don't know, that's taking a risk. $100. I said, $100 it is. So the cook showed Ollie the room, the upper room that the people met in. And I said, thank you. I won't get you involved any further. I don't want you to get in any trouble. The guy says, appreciate it. I don't know nothing. You didn't hear anything from me. And I climbed up into a dark corner of the room there, and he decided he was going to do a stakeout. He snuck down at one point and grabbed some stuff from the kitchen because he realized he was going to be there all day. But he waited and waited until Tuesday night came, and then one by one, a bunch of people filed into the office. into the room there. First it was the barkeep, then it was a couple of people from the city council, then the shopkeep that hired him, then the chief of police, then a handful of people that Ollie didn't recognize. Once the table was almost full, and the cook had brought up some beer and some nachos, one of the men that Ollie didn't recognize banged a gavel and said, "All right, let's get started. The monthly meeting of the Nightingales is called to order." And I said, "Oh man, it's real. It's real." And I heard them talk, and they talked for a long time. They talked about how they were preparing for the big spring ritual. And then the police chief asked, "So, Bill, you got your detective here. Is everything going as planned?" The shopkeep said, yeah, I mean, he's going around asking people about stuff. I think it's going to cover everything up just fine." The police just said, good. We don't need any more outside attention. So if we publicize a little bit that we brought in a fancy city detective, and the city detective found nothing, then that should get everybody off our backs, and we can go back into a little bit more open operation. It's been kind of a pain recently with all this attention on us, having to pretend like we don't exist. So good job, keep it up. We got to make sure he doesn't find anything. The shopkeeper said, "Yeah, don't worry. I'm giving him all bad leads." Even the whole pig blood thing. Well, it's easy to take it if I leave the door open for you. And there was laughter around the room. They talked about a bunch of other stuff, including some of these pagan rituals that they were going to be doing at the big spring festival. And then the meeting kind of broke up, and some people hung out a little bit longer and ordered a few more beers, and they went down to the bar and just kind of hung out casually. Finally, everybody left the room, and Ollie could sneak his way out too. He went outside and he said, "Well, I know what's going on, but the people that hired me, they're part of the conspiracy. Who do I tell?" And I thought, well, maybe I should go and have another talk with this librarian. So the next morning he went over to the library, and the librarian was hanging out reading a mystery novel. I said, "Ollie, good to see you. If you find anything out?" I said, "Yeah, I wanted to ask you about it. You mentioned the Nightingales. There've been a lot of people asking about them." And Brett said, "Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're not the first person, but mostly it's been from town. But, yeah, it seems like a bunch of the local teenagers found out about some old stuff and some old journals from their grandparents and stuff like that, and they've been trying to dig up whether or not the Nightingales are still around. And, yeah, I think they probably are, Ollie. So, yeah, I guess I should have mentioned this earlier, but I wrote a little piece in a local community newsletter about, what history we do know about the Nightingales. And, yeah, I've gotten a few threatening letters, actually. I don't know why it didn't occur to me to mention this to you before, but yeah. I don't think much of it. They weren't very threatening. But just tell me that they're real. Well, I says, "Well, yeah, they are real. I snuck into their meeting. They hired me as a front. They thought I wouldn't find anything, because they're not doing anything until I've gone. But they had that meeting, and I was hiding in the rafters." My brain said, "Oh, man. So it's real. Well, Ollie, there's only one thing I can tell you. You tell me everything you learned, everything you heard. And then you better get out of town. Because the one thing I know, the Nightingales don't like interference from outsiders." I can publish this, and they'll be mad at me. They won't do anything bad. But you, I don't know. You're an outsider. They don't trust outsiders. So, over dinner and drinks that night, Ollie told him everything he'd heard at the meeting. The librarian wrote down every single word. And then in the morning, I went over to the shopkeep and said, well, I didn't find anything. I wish I could help you more, but I'd say that the police chief's offer to have one of his officers come over and look at your security system would probably be the best thing. I wish there was more I could do to help. Sorry. Then I left. But he kept an eye on the newspaper. Sure enough, about a week and a half later, in the big local regional paper that covered that town and 30 other towns nearby, there's a big front page story. It said, occult ring exposed in Deerhampton, which is the name of the town. Chief of police, mayor, local business leaders doing pagan rituals. And I put down the newspaper and he thought, well, I guess helped a little bit on that one. Sounds like they got some more problems to deal with. And that was the case of Ollie and the Nightingales.